Hi all my students of Standard 10. How are you? And I don't know, I always ask this question, how are you? Even though I know that most of you would be studying very hard for your exams. So, okay, in this module, I'm going to do the Second World War, and this is my second module on that. I hope to complete it today. Let's see how much we can do. If you have your textbooks in front of you, you will see that last time what we have done, I had given you notes till the causes of the Second World War. Okay, my notes have covered that till the causes of the Second World War, which is a part of your syllabus. Then we have the events of the World War, which is for your knowledge and for understanding. You don't have to learn them by rote. Okay, it is for reading. And of course there are one or two words like the meaning of blitzkrieg, which was carried out, which is known as the lightning war, which was carried out by Germany. Then there is also the day on which Hitler committed suicide. That was on 7th of May 1945. And then May 8th was celebrated as a day of celebration of victory in Europe. So these are a few dates which you should know. Okay, so when you're learning it, I've made you all underline it in the last module, so you all can easily remember those dates. So today we are going to begin with the attack on the Pearl Harbor. And before I start, of course, I'll be giving you my notes. So I hope to finish how much ever we can today. So let's see, this is the first page, and then this is, we continue, and okay, let's see. First, we'll deal with these three. Now, if you remember that, Japan had had started expanding because Japan wanted to rule in the Far East. So they had also accepted a policy of expansion, and Japan was really growing. And then, she conquered that Manchuria, even though she was told not to set up a government over there, and then she set up a government. We've done all that in the first module. Okay, so now why was Pearl Harbor attacked? Okay, so and who attacked it? Now see, I have told you all this earlier that there were a few countries who remained neutral. Okay, and these countries who remained neutral were, look into your notes, we've got it. The only countries who remained neutral were Sweden, Switzerland, Spain, Portugal, and Turkey. Germany, Italy, and Japan, they formed the Axis power, and Britain, France, and USA were called as the Allied powers. America had followed a policy of strict neutrality for a very long time. But what it did to America, it did not itself involve in the war, but it leased out armaments to Britain and China. So America did that. Okay. Then the only military force that Japan actually feared was the US Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor. So US had got a Pacific Fleet harbored in Pearl Harbor. So Japan was afraid of that. So what did they do? They ordered a surprise aerial attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. So Japan said, okay, we'll attack them, and there was a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor on 7th December 1941. Okay, and to halt this advance, because Japan attacked the the US Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor, to stop them from advancing, USA joined, and USA joined the Second World War on the 8th of December in 1941. That is when USA joined. Okay, now then we come to, that was the attack on Pearl Harbor. Now we come to the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. See, the Americans started, it's very simple, I've just put down the facts in short so that you can understand. Okay, Americans started the offensive against Japan to liberate the islands of the Southwest Pacific. Japan was still strongly established in China, Manchuria, and other places. In China, where Manchuria, it was told not to have its government, but it had established itself. In 1945, the Japanese in the Philippines formed the kamikaze. That means the Suicide Air Corps. So they formed an entire group which was called as the Kamikaze, means the Suicide Air Corps. And what did they do? The young Japanese pilots, they steered an explosive laden plane into the deck of an American ship. Okay, so those people came and they came onto the American ship. The scientists this is what was happening on one side. While what was happening in USA, what was happening was that the scientists in the United States had already been working on making of an atomic bomb, and this atomic bomb had been detonated near Alamogordo, which is in New Mexico. Okay, so they already had tested it and everything. Now, American planes, they dropped leaflets warning about the deadly weapons and urging Japan to end the war, to stop fighting. But Japan did not listen to them. So on the 6th of August 1945, on August 6, 1945, the first atomic bomb was used on Hiroshima. Okay. We have a poem also. As far as our ICSE English syllabus is concerned, we have got this poem wherein this entire description is given. You all would be knowing that. No? So that is what had happened. On the 6th of August 1945, Hiroshima faced the first atomic bomb. Then what happened? The Japanese still refused to surrender. So another bomb was dropped on Nagasaki on the 9th of August. So, because they did not surrender, there was another bomb which came on Nagasaki. Then what happened? Japan surrendered unconditionally on the 15th of August 1945. So, on 15th of August, Japan surrendered without any conditions, unconditionally. And where was this surrender signed, this surrender treaty? It was signed on the deck of USS Missouri on September 2nd. Okay, so they made them sign it on that deck where, she had taken her whatever. So this day, that is September 2nd, was declared as a VJ Day. What do you mean by VJ? Standing for Victory Over Japan. Okay, so that was his day, September 2nd. And the World War II came to an end after 6 long years. So World War II continued for 6 long years, and it ended on 2nd of September when it became to be declared as the VJ Day. That means a victory over Japan. Okay, that much you are supposed to know. Now we come to the consequences of the war. What were the consequences of the war? So we have done both these points, attack on Pearl Harbor and the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Now, what were the consequences? There were 3 consequences of the war. First was the defeat of the Axis power, then the formation of UN, and then the Cold War, okay, which began after the Second World War. That was a consequence. Now, what was the defeat of the Axis power? Up to the middle of 1942, the Axis powers, that is Germany, Italy, and Japan, they had captured large territories in Europe, Africa, and Asia. However, in November 1942, the Allied powers, that is Britain, France, Soviet Union, and the USA, these were the Allied powers. So in November, they recaptured the African territories which had been lost by France. They defeated Italy and Germany. Who defeated them? The Allied powers. Who were the Allied powers? Britain, France, Soviet Union, and USA. Okay. Then the Allied powers turned their attention towards Japan. And when Japan did not surrender, the bombs were dropped. Japan signed the Potsdam Declaration and the war ended. Then the FRG. What is FRG? The Federal Republic of Germany. The FRG, which is commonly known as West Germany. Germany was divided into 2 parts, East Germany and West Germany. So we come to West Germany, which is known as the Federal Republic of Germany. So that was administered as West Germany was administered by UK, France, and US. So West Germany was administered by UK, France, and US, and it came under the capitalist ideology. Okay, so their ideology which they followed was the capitalist ideology. Okay, where there is more importance given to capitalism, that is a particular form of ideology, and where people who have capital, people who are industrialists, they are encouraged. Okay, and it became to be known as the capitalist bloc. Then the next thing, GDR. What is GDR? German Democratic Republic. So which was East Germany. So German Democratic Republic, known as East Germany, was administered by Soviet Union, and it came under the influence of the communist ideology, and it became the communist bloc. So what did the Second World War see? It saw the rise of two very strong powers. One was the capitalist bloc and one was the communist bloc. Okay. And then what was the third important consequence? The formation of the UN. Now you remember I had told you earlier, we have seen that the League of Nations was a failure because nobody paid any heed to the League of Nations, which had been formed after the First World War, as a result of which the Second World War took place. So after the Second World War, they formed another group which was known as the United Nations. Now failure of the League of Nations and the horrors of the two world wars led to a meeting of the big three. Who are these big three? The President of USA, Roosevelt, the Prime Minister of Britain, Churchill, and the Premier of USSR, that is Stalin. Okay, at Yalta. Where did they meet? They met at Yalta in February 1945. So they met in February 1945 and they drew up a charter. They met again. First of all, these three met at Yalta in 1945. Okay, that is when they met. Who are the big three who met? Roosevelt, Churchill and Stalin. So they met at Yalta in 1945. And then there was another meeting that was conducted. There was another conference in San Francisco in the same year, where they drew up a charter of the United Nations. There was a conference and they drew up a charter that, okay, this is what we are planning to do, and with all the representatives of all the nations present. So that time it was not only these three who were present, but the representatives of a lot of other nations were also present, and they all drew up the charter, of course with these three being the main. Okay, so the UNO was established on October 24th, 1945. Okay, this I have explained in detail when I have done the United Nations in my other module. Okay, so UNO was established on October 24th, 1945, and it is celebrated as a United Nations Day. Okay, now we come to the Cold War. So we have seen the effects till here. The two effects we have seen. What are the two effects that we have seen? The first one, of course, was the defeat of the Axis power. I have given you the three in sequential order. The first one was the defeat of the Axis powers, then the formation of the UN, and the third effect was the Cold War. So please take down the notes on the Cold War. I have not given it to you. I thought I might take time, but I have done it pretty fast. So take it down. Cold War. What exactly do we mean by the Cold War? It's a part of your syllabus, so you are supposed to understand it. Okay, let's understand what we mean by the Cold War. Towards the end of the Second World War, that is a war. Now see, if I have written over here the war, because these are the notes on the Second World War, it's understood that it is a Second World War. But when you are writing the answer, please write towards the end of the Second World War. Okay. The two powers who fought together, that is the USA and the erstwhile Soviet Union, they had fought together. Okay, but then what happened? They declined. The harmony declined towards each other. And why? Because both the countries had different ideologies. And even though they did not engage in actual fight, means there was no actual war or actual bombing each other or actual military fighting, nothing. There was no actual war, but there was a state of extreme political tension, and each side adopted policies to weaken the other side. So that is called a Cold War, where you don't actually fight a war face to face, but you because your ideologies are different, because you have differences in your ideas and your thoughts, what you do is you plan policies and you plan your movements in such a way so that the other side is weakened. Okay, that's called a Cold War, and this is known as a Cold War where there is no actual conflict. Now, what is a Cold War? Now, why have I given you this meaning? Over here I mean the definition, because in your syllabus, if you see your textbook, they have given you that you have to know the Cold War meaning. Cold War meaning, the NATO and the Warsaw. Only meanings are given to you. That is why I've given it to you as meaning, that what exactly is the Cold War. Okay. The earlier part also is Cold War, but the definition of Cold War. Cold War is defined as an atmosphere where there is no armed struggle, but the rivals continue to maintain peacetime along with their hostility. So they are hostile towards each other, but they maintain peacetime because they know that both are equally strong. It's not that only one person is strong. Both are strong. The capitalists are also strong, the communists are also strong. They both are aware of each other's powers. So what they do is they continue to maintain a peacetime, but they adopt policies where there is hostility, and in a way so that it weakens the opposite side. Okay. Now, what are the characteristics of a Cold War? The characteristics, first one, bitter state of tension and hostility, the absence of an armed struggle, ideological hatred and political distrust, neither an era of peace nor an era where war prevails. Okay, so now why I have given you these 4 characteristics? If you get it as a 2-mark answer, you have to give the 4 characteristics and you have to give the definition of Cold War. And what was the result of this Cold War? The division of the world into 2 blocks, one led by the USA and one led by erstwhile USSR. So that was the final outcome of the Second World War, which developed into a Cold War. Okay, that is, it's somewhat, there's a reflection of it which we can see in the Russian-Ukraine conflict. If you all are following up on news, you can, and if you have the time, you can delve into it. I will not delve into it, but I've just given you a hint because I want to finish off the portion quickly so that you are ready for your exams. Okay, so with that, we've completed the entire syllabus, and please do the questions which are given to you in your textbook at the back. They are very important and it will give you a good practice. But my advice to you is that do not open an answer book or a guide or whatever you may call it and check the answers. Don't do that. You learn your topic, learn it, then set yourself a particular amount of time. Say these questions, if you are doing the structured questions and the short answer questions, if you are going to do everything, then you would require about 2 hours for this one chapter. For all your chapters, if you are doing the entire thing, it requires 2 hours. If you are just doing the multiple choice questions and the options, and if you are just doing the MCQs, then it's easy and you can finish it off within MCQs can be done in half an hour. Short answer questions would take you about 45 minutes depending on how fast you write. So but the advice that I'm trying to give you is that you learn the chapter and then you do the answers. Once you do the answers, then you open up your guide, or if you have a tuition teacher, good, because then she can correct or she can discuss it in the tuitions, or you can ask your school teacher that I have done this, and every school teacher will check. It is not, they cannot refuse to check if you solve the questions of your textbook. Please remember this, children, it is your right. Even if the school teacher has not asked you to do it and you solve the questions, then as a matter of right, she has to check the answers for you. And she has to give you marks accordingly. So if you don't have a tuition teacher, which I would think is excellent, so if you don't have a tuition teacher and you don't have a guide in front of you, you can request your school teacher to please check the answers for you. Okay, so that you know where you stand. Otherwise, of course, guides are available. You can check it up on that also. Okay, in case she doesn't have time and she refuses. But I don't think any teacher would refuse. So, with that, I come to an end of the Second World War, and I'll see you all again in my next module as soon as possible. And see you all. Bye, everyone. Here's Himangi, your History Civics facilitator, wishing you all a goodbye and happy learning, happy writing.